everyone, and welcome to another Trans in the City podcast. My name is Sarah, my pronouns are she, her, and I am honoured to be one of the directors of Trans in the City. It's one of many roles, and I generally work with LGBTQ young people and LGBTQ families. I'm absolutely honoured to be joined today by Sarah from FFLAG. Sarah, welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Yes, just to confuse everyone, another Sarah. My pronouns are also she, her. And as the first Sarah said, yes, I'm the chair of FFLAG, which is a charity that supports parents, families and friends of LGBT plus children of all ages. And I'm also a mum of a wonderful trans young person who is now 27 and actually part of a blended family. So my husband and I have 3 children between us, all in their 20s. And yeah, looking forward to sharing some experiences of family life tonight.
Well, thank you so much. I think this is a topic that's really important. It's certainly close to my heart, and from what you've just said, obviously close to yours as well. So tell us a little bit about FFLAG. Sort of how did FFLAG form? Tell us a bit of the history of FFLAG.
Well, FFLAG is a charity that has been in existence for 30 years. We celebrated our 30th anniversary conference last year. But actually the roots of FFLAG go back much, much further than that, to the 1960s, when a really incredible woman called Rose Robertson started to advocate for a couple of young men who were lodging in her house in London. Now, Rose wasn't actually a parent, but these 2 young men were renting rooms in her house, and she came to understand that they were there because they were gay and because their families had thrown them out. And she thought that this was so terrible that she took it upon herself to ring up the families of the young men and try and intercede and try and broker some sort of reconciliation between them. And that was the idea that started her off in forming FFLAG. And in these, I mean, we have to remember in those days, being gay was illegal. And so it really was something that wasn't understood, and there was a lot of fear and mistrust around it. And, you know, children being disowned by their families. I mean, I know it still happens, but it was probably even more prevalent then. Yes, very sadly. So from this sort of initial start, parent helplines sprung up all around the UK, and in the 70s and 80s, I think there were up to 30, 35 individual helplines. And these were just parents who put themselves forward and for other parents to ring up and have a chat. So because when your child comes out, parents can have a little bit of a wobble sometimes. The future you imagined for your child suddenly has to switch to a new story. And parents meet this with a differing degree of understanding. And if you don't understand, there's often a lot of fear, guilt, all sorts of emotions can come out. So
I think there's sometimes an element of grief as well that comes out. Even the most supportive parents who are really keen to support their child and young person in their journey. Like you said, as parents, I'm a parent myself, as parents, we do envisage a life for our children, and I think when that maybe changes, or our concept of that changes in whatever way, I think there's an element of grief that we have to let go of what we saw. It doesn't mean we're not supporting that child or young person through their journey. It just means that actually there's our own emotions to consider within that.
Sure. And along with the grief, I think there's also guilt that we've made assumptions based on our own experience and our own unawareness. These haven't been things that we've deliberately imposed on our child. We might think that we're very open and accepting, and suddenly we realize we've imagined this based very much on our own experience, and there's a guilt thinking, well, why didn't I know? I should have been doing something to support them earlier. Anyway, it can come to that. But FFLAG, it started like that with the helplines, and then in the 1980s, as we all know, a terrible piece of legislation came out, Section 28, which effectively prevented teachers supporting well, I mean, trans wasn't even mentioned, but LGBT young people in schools, it drove this underground. It made it something dangerous to talk about. And it was at that point that FLAG parents realised, we're not just here to support and give peer support, we need to fight. We're here to fight for our children. And that's when FLAG formed as a charity, in order to be stronger, to campaign. So campaigning for and against all sorts of things, you know, for the repeal of Section 28, for equal marriage, to lift the ban in the military, all sorts of campaigning activities. And those parents, I mean, they're fantastic. So pictures of, you know, very smartly dressed mums who're going down to the Houses of Parliament to protest and speak to politicians and hold up banners and march in pride and all sorts of things to fight for our children. That went on really through until the early 2000s. So by 2010, with the Equalities Act, FLAG started to think, are we, you know, have we done it? You know, we're always hoping for a day when we're redundant, we won't be needed anymore. But around that same time, there started to be an increase in requests for support from families with a young person who is trans. And that's where I really came into the picture, because I was one of such mum. And so FLAG started then to work to be trans inclusive, because we couldn't just say, right now we're trans inclusive. The support, the support we offer is peer support. So we have a helpline, we have email support, we have local groups in various locations around the country, and we also have online Zoom parents groups. We have our booklets and resources. Our website is a big source of the resources and support that we give. But our offer is that when you contact FLAG, you will be speaking to another parent, you will be speaking to someone who has stood in your shoes and faced those same fears. So there's no judgment. And I think we are unique in being a charity that is primarily for parents. There are other great charities who actually support trans people and trans youth. We are not qualified youth workers, we're not counsellors, we can't give advice, nor would we want to, but we are parents who can listen and understand. We can hold your hand if you're having a bit of a wobble. We are a safe space where you can let out your fears and negative thoughts, things that you don't want to say to your child. You don't want to let your child know how frightened you might be about the future that they might be facing, or that we, in our sort of ignorance, think they will be facing. But when you speak to other parents and they listen, they don't judge, and then they will just tell their own story, or tell you things that they found useful, or, you know, it's so powerful. It's such a relief. And so that's what FLAG does. And as I say, since sort of the mid 2010s, certainly has been working to become more and more trans inclusive. And that hasn't been difficult, because the parents who are contacting us are, I would say now, majority parents of trans young people.
Which sadly isn't surprising. I think when I came out to my parents, I think they certainly could have done with something like FLAG, actually. To certainly my mum would have really benefited from that support, and like you said, that peer network of having other parents around her who had walked those shoes and were standing there with her, and that fellowship, I guess, that little community and that understanding is, I think, and it's so vital. I know many parents who have benefited from the support that FLAG has given them and provided, and I know, and actually FLAG was commended. They received the CEO, well, a few select individuals in particular received our CEO's award at our gala in 2022 to recognise just the impact that FFLAG has made over those 30 years. So tell us a little bit more. You touched on it briefly, but tell everyone a little bit more about your journey into sort of how you became involved in FFLAG and how you're now chair of FFLAG and your journey through that.
Well, I think my journey is very, very typical of parents. So as I say, we're a blended family. There are 3 children, as we thought. We thought we had 3 boys who were all sort of teenage when we came together as a family. And prior to that, I'd been on my own for quite a long time with my child, and we were very, very close. And, you know, it was a bit sort of like, I will be referring to them with they, them pronouns, and I'll use a nickname, Nuts, which just gives them a little bit of privacy. So it was sort of me and Nuts against the rest of the world. We had a lot of adventures together. It was great. And when they got to 18, they went off to university, and we live in Cornwall, and they went to university in London. And all seemed to be going pretty well. I visited them a couple of times in the first term, and I mean, they seemed quite solitary and quite quiet, but that was kind of normal for them. I wasn't too concerned about it. But when they came home at Christmas, something was really wrong, and they didn't want to talk about it. And this was very unusual and really quite frightening. And also, I think, you know, it's a time as a parent when you're having to come to terms as well that your child is growing up. You have to let go a bit. You have to, you know, this is the, you know, they should be doing their own thing, but it's, you know, I did miss them terribly. And when they came back, to see them in a really terrible state was, yeah, just awful and frightening. And yeah, they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't make any plans for their travel back to London. And it sort of, I think it got to sort of like the day before they were due back. And I said, well, look, what's happening? Are you expecting me to drive you to London if you booked a train? And they said, no, I'm not going back. And there followed a period of probably, oh, I don't know. Well, actually, it can only have been about 6 weeks, because I remember it was half term. The younger kids were still at school. So, but it seemed like forever. They didn't want to talk about what had gone wrong. They didn't really come out of their room very much. They didn't contact old friends. They didn't seem to be having any kind of contact or life at all outside just being in their bedroom. And I didn't know what it was that was going on. And then, as I say, in February, one evening, they came into my room very late. They chose a time when everyone else was away. The boys were with their mum. My husband was away working, and Nuts came into my room and said, well, Mum, I think I should tell you what's going on for me, why I'm, why I haven't gone back to university. And I remember being quite nervous. I mean, I was already gone to bed. It was very late, and they came and sat with me, and they held my hand, and they explained very hesitantly. It was difficult for them, but they explained that over a number of years, they had come to terms or, recognized that they were transgender. And I was enormously shocked. I couldn't really take it in. I mean, I think I managed, I know I managed to hug them and tell them that I loved them. And they said, have you got any questions? And I said, well, I probably will have, but, not right now. But inside my head was just a screaming, this is not happening. Sorry, not because I didn't want it to happen, not because I wanted to stop it, but I just couldn't understand. I couldn't take it in. I didn't know what it meant. I sort of knew, but at the same time, I couldn't work out what this would mean for them, for us, for our family, all that sort of thing. And it felt so unreal that the next morning when I woke up, I wasn't sure whether it actually happened or not. I've
Had
talked to
you met had you met any other trans young people at
no,
this time? Any of your
no,
friends? So this was
no.
really your first experience
Yeah, as
of,
far as I knew,
someone who was
yeah,
trans.
I'd never met anyone who was trans. Even my sort of contact with anyone from the LGBT community was so minimal. And this is one of the things that I reflect on now and think, oh, why didn't we talk about this? Why didn't we, this is just a part of everyday life. Just because it's not within our personal experience, why did we never think this could easily be within the experience of our children, whether it's, they are part of the community, or whether it's a friend of theirs or a teacher or a colleague. Why haven't we prepared them properly for the world? But it just wasn't something that had come up. I didn't think it affected us, and I hadn't been involved at all, which, yeah. So I've said to Nuts later, when you actually, told me, I was, really taken aback, but I think I managed to sort of cover it up. They were like, oh, Mum, you so didn't. Oh dear. And I am sorry about that. I am sad about that, because I did fall apart, and I didn't go to work for a few days. I cried a lot, and I was lucky enough to be able to access counselling through my work, so that meant I had a place to sort of let out those feelings, but they were not completely hidden from Nuts, and I really, really regret that. But there we are. This is what happened. We've talked about it since. I was then lucky enough to find FFLAG almost immediately, actually through another fantastic charity that operates in the Southwest called the Intercom Trust, who, they're great, and they provide support and advocacy, and they are trained youth workers, and they are counsellors.
Yeah, they are.
And they do all the schools lunchtimes groups in Cornwall and Devon, in lots of different schools. And they were holding, and still hold, in a different form, gender identity family days in Cornwall, where the whole family can go and meet together. And the young people would maybe do an activity, although often that activity is just on their phones. And, but they're hanging out together, they're having a good time, and the parents could talk together. And initially I didn't want to go. My husband persuaded me to go. I thought, this is something private. I'm too upset. I can't talk about it. But, oh my goodness, the wonderful relief and support of saying how you felt. And people you didn't have to explain. People got it. And people then shared their story and said things that they'd found helpful. But almost what I found even more powerful was that someone would say, oh, I felt like this. I felt grief there. I really felt sad. I felt that I know it's not true, but I felt that I'd lost the child that I had. And another person saying, oh, I didn't feel like that at all. I felt I gained like such a much closer relationship with my child. I felt honored. And that was so powerful. It's like, oh yeah, the fears and the feelings that I'm feeling, I don't have to feel them.
No.
It's kind of like, it's a choice, and from that kind of moment of awakening for me, it just went, for me, better and better and better. It opened my eyes so much, and it opened my world to such a sort of more inclusive and positive worldview. I'm not saying that happened straight away. It took some time.
No. Yeah, it's something that needs work, and and it's a process, isn't it?
Yeah, but the outcome for me is wow, and it made me realize, oh, I've been so blinkered about this. I've made such assumptions about this. My worldview has been narrow, which I didn't think it was. What else have I not looked at? And Black Lives Matter happened very soon after that. That definitely, I thought, right, I'm going to do work now. I'm going to learn about this. I'm going to educate myself. So I really sort of thank my child for, in, you know, sort of in my, well, I'm in my 50s now, I was in my 40s then, it opened a whole sort of new lease of life for me. And it was so positive that, yeah, it didn't take me long to learn what I needed to know, you know, to stop my fear. I was afraid because I didn't understand and I didn't know what was going to happen. Now I still don't know what's going to happen for my child with their transition, but they're an adult now, and it's like, that's not the only thing about them. You know, we talk about other things, but it didn't take me long to get that information. But what I was left with was, why didn't I know this before? You know, if only we talked openly about all these things, and if only parents then could think, you know, when your children are young, you think, oh, I wonder if they, you know, maybe they'll be sporty. Not very likely if they take after me. You know, maybe they'll be artistic. Maybe they'll travel. Maybe they'll want to be a teacher or an educator. You know, what if we also thought, I wonder what gender they will be. I wonder what their identity will be. I wonder what their sexuality will be. And then when that becomes apparent, it would be a thing to celebrate and know, not something to think, hang on, no, this isn't right, is it? And then relearning a new way. And also, I mean, I cannot help thinking about, I mean, Nut struggled with this for at least 4 or 5 years before telling me. What did I say or not say during those years that made it not okay for them to come out? In fact, they've said to me, Mum, I didn't really know what it was myself.
I was going to say they were possibly on their own journey to figuring out their own identity, and you know, sometimes it can be really hard to communicate that. I know from my own coming out, you know, it wasn't necessarily okay. Possibly for me, it did play a part on that. That's me. Concerned about the reception I was going to get, but for a large part of it, it was actually me having to figure out the fact that I was gay, and then from there having to figure out, and by actually saying it, by coming out, especially to my family, I had to accept it myself, and I think that's something I'm probably still working on. But yes, certainly there had to be a level of acceptance for me to be able to voice it. And it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't necessarily a direct correlation to fear of rejection. As I said, it potentially did play a part, but it was more about me having to understand it myself and accept it about myself before verbalizing it.
Yeah. But nevertheless, as a parent, you still sort of, you know, you worry about it. And that's what really drove me to volunteer for FFLAG. I wanted to both support other parents, because the support that I had received was so fantastic. And we know when parents are happy and supporting their young people, the outcomes are so much better for the young person.
Absolutely, 100%. And that is genuinely the impact that FFLAG has. Yes, okay, we talk about the support for parents and carers that it provides, but actually let's not take away the impact it then has on the young people themselves. And
the
it does,
purpose of it
absolutely does. Exactly.
That. So I wanted to be part of that. I also wanted to campaign. I mean, actually, when Nuts came out, it was, I think, 2017. And at that time, or around that time, there seemed to be quite a positive narrative, or an improving narrative for trans people in the media. I remember very well, not long after they came out, there was a National Geographic edition where the front page had pictures of lots and lots and lots of different people, and really positive reporting on, you know, different ways of expressing gender and different cultures around the world where that is just, you know, that is, I don't want to say normal, that is part of the culture. There are, you know, that there are many gender identities, and that is absolutely expected. And, you know, I found that really helpful and powerful as a parent, sort of learning about it. It's like, oh, it was another way of demonstrating. It's like, no, we have these narrow assumptions, but it's not universal, you know. So there was this sort of positivity, but, you know, that has certainly taken a big turn for the worse, and so therefore my desire to also increase the active campaigning of FLAG has increased too. So we're doing both. We're starting to sort of increase our campaigning work again, but part of our campaigning is just to share our stories, to show
Absolutely.
happy family units where people are accepted and able to be themselves, and parents are proud of their children, and
and the young people are thriving. Because it is possible. It is possible for trans, non-binary, and gender diverse young people to truly thrive. And I think the more we see that, because we also see the horrific narrative that is around at the moment, and I think by platforming positive stories, I think not only does that show that they exist, but also it does provide hope for so many that it's possible. So yeah, I think that's so valid, and yeah, I'm really pleased to see FLAG doing more of it.
I also think that it's a positive message for everyone. I mean, one of our founders is Michael, and one of our patrons, is Michael Cashman. One of our patrons is also the wonderful Bobbi Pickard, which we're so pleased about, because that really gives us power and helps us and challenges us to make sure that we're truly trans inclusive, and I'm updating some of the resources again to, and getting the language right and all those sorts of things. But, Michael Cashman always says, only together. And if we're, working for a society where the most vulnerable people are okay, and we're making it better and good for them, then it must be making it better and good for everyone else as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, I love reading, and so after Nuts came out, and I was sort of initial shock, and then it's like, right, I need to read. I mean, the other crazy thing I did was on the first day when I woke up and thought it wasn't real, and then thought, what can I do? Because Nuts is was a film student, is really into films and so on. I went straight down to HMV. This shows the old days, and bought a DVD. Remember the DVD of Orlando, Virginia Woolf's, the adaptation of Virginia Woolf, because I thought, right, that was my first impulse of something that I could do to help, that was that we could watch this film together. But it was just a way of trying to signal, it's like, yes, I'm trying to understand this, and I know that here is a representation which might lead to us being able to have a conversation, But
it's opening up, it's options to open up that narrative and open up those communications, which, clearly for all, and I hear you, I hear that, I think every parent struggles with guilt. I don't think anyone warns you about that. As soon as that pregnancy test turns positive, the guilt hits. I certainly was not warned about that. But I hear what you said about wishing you'd have maybe handled things differently. But I just want to also say your child still felt safe to come out, and that says so much. And look at what you've done. Though we are fortunate, or you're fortunate, that there are parents who are so supportive, and that's obviously had that experience with you, that they did have a very supportive parents and a supportive family. And let's not take away from that, but at the same time, we need more parents and more families like yours that create that environment for young people like Nuts to come out, because we know that all too often it's not a positive experience for these young people, especially if they're trans or non-binary or gender non-conforming and gender diverse. We know that there are an awful lot of young people struggling out there who don't have such a positive experience and that support at home. What would you say, sort of looking now at sort of the journey you've been on, both personally and with FLAG as well, but maybe on a personal level, what was the key bit, was very key moment, a key bit of advice? I know you've touched on that, sort of having to rephrase your thinking, but was there anything else around sort of your journey as a parent of a trans young person that really sticks out, a bit of advice or something that really made an impact and really sort of supported you in your journey?
I think there was a key moment when I joined FLAG as a volunteer, and we talked about the support things and so on, and they said, well, and also we go to as many prides as possible. And I thought, oh, and I felt a bit, oh, I don't know if it's really, I mean, it sounded like fun, great, but should I really be there? You know, am I taking up someone else's space, or, you know, it's not about me, is it? And all this sort of thing. Anyway, I went along because I'm, you know, a very dutiful volunteer. And, you know, we wear our T-shirts and it says, you know, proud parent or proud of my gay son. And or we have banners sometimes that, you know, I love, you know, one FFLAG volunteer has a big placard saying, I love my 2 gay sons. I've got one saying, I love my trans child. You know, when we march in Pride, you feel that wave of love. And to my surprise, I realized that, you know, it is actually for us specifically. It's not just the general cheering. But the first Pride I went to was in the Southwest. I think it was in Exeter. Quite a small Pride, quite a small group of us. We marched, and then at the end we were just standing around, and a young woman came up to me and said, can I take a selfie with you? And I thought, yeah. But I did feel a bit confused because, I mean, there were unicorns, there were people just sprayed with glitter, there were a lot more exciting people to be photographed with, I thought. She took the picture and then she said, now I'm going to text this to my mum and show her that some parents still love their children when they come out. And I understood. I think it was at that moment that I went from being a volunteer to being like, right, I am in FFLAG now. This is it. This is my mission.
This is your, you know, this is your calling. This is where you're meant to be.
We are here to speak out, and we hope that, you know, when we are visible like that, we know that at Prides there are young people, it may be the first time that they come out fully able to, you know, express themselves as themselves, or they may not even be doing that, but they're coming to Pride and just, you know, being there in their first sort of foray and seeing what's happening. And we really hope that if they see parents celebrating, loving, being proud of their children, it might give them hope. You know, it might actually be okay to tell your parents. And if it isn't, please send them our way, because for us, essentially, it's about love. It's about love.
My turn. My turn now. But it is. I've worked with far too many young people who have faced that rejection, and breaks my heart every time. Doesn't matter how many times you support those different young people, it breaks my heart every time. So yeah, it's just it. If you could give a bit of advice to a parent who's maybe struggling with their young person, their child, their family member coming out, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, we always say we don't give advice because we're not trained to give advice, but I would,
True.
no, I would, but I would say, you know, listen, and try to understand them. But if you don't understand, just love them. You know that you love them. They are the same person that they always were. They're now communicating something really deeply personal and important about themselves to you. And this is a privilege. This is a wonderful testament to the faith that they have in you as a parent. Please don't let them down.
No. How can parents, family members, friends get in touch with FFLAG? What's the best way of them getting support from you?
I think the easiest thing is to go onto our website, flag.org.uk, and there will be links there then to, you know, you might not be ready to speak to anyone yet, so there's just resources, our booklets. We have the guide for family and friends. I would really recommend it. It's very sort of basic introductory information, but it will also link and signpost you to sort of further reading, further things if you want. Our support services are all accessible via the website, so you'll have the helpline number. We have email support because sometimes, again, I know I wasn't ready to pick up the phone and speak to someone. I sort of wanted to do it at one remove through an email, but other people, it's like, no, I just want to speak to someone now. You can ring up. And then we have information about the different parents groups, but there's ways for you to do research and signpost via our website, but you can also contact us and we'll sort of tailor it to you. You know, we'll do the sort of looking for you, because sometimes in those early days you want some easy pointers, and we can give those.
Amazing. And one last thing, tell me something positive. Tell me something positive about your journey or Nut's journey, something that has been positive and maybe a bit of hope.
I suppose it's just the joy that being part of a much more interesting family has brought me. I mean, genuinely, it has opened my eyes. I think it was last summer. I went to a concert with Nuts and their girlfriend. I mean, they've been together since school, so they're together through all this journey. It hasn't made any difference to the love that they have for each other. So that's a beautiful thing to me.
I love that. That's a very beautiful thing.
We went to a concert together, an open air concert. It was in Bristol, and I looked around, and most people there were younger than me. Most of them were sort of Nuts' age group, and I looked around, and there were hundreds and hundreds of young people where you couldn't necessarily neatly categorize them into male and female, should you want to, which obviously I no longer wish to do. But the fact that it was not apparent and everyone was happily there, there was no, it didn't require comment. And I thought, you know, it is going to be okay. When this generation come to power, it will be fine. We just need to work to sort of make that happen a bit more quickly. But I really do feel,
I talk about this a lot.
Very hopeful for the future. I just want that future to happen now.
And I think, you know, it's incredible to see people like you, and it's really inspiring, without being patronizing, to have people like you who are empowering that generation, who are empowering the future change makers, the future decision makers to be themselves, because that is what will lead to them doing the same for hopefully the nation. But yes, I talk a lot about how Gen Z are redefining gender and how exciting that is, and how much hope there genuinely is for future generations because of what we're seeing. And yeah, I'm excited to see that as well, actually. I'll fully back that.
Great. And we older generations need to be excited about that too, because it will bring benefits for us. That's the other message that I would like to be out there. This is not something to be feared and resisted. This is something positive for all of us. So come on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep empowering them. Let's keep advocating for them, and let's keep platforming their voices and giving these young people a chance to use their voices for this positive change that we all need. We all desperately want to see it. So absolutely, Sarah, it has been a genuine honor to have some time with you, to get to know you a bit more, and just to hear a bit about your story and the incredible and genuinely life-changing work that FFLAG does. Thank you so much for your time and your honesty as well. It's been an honor.
No, thank you very much. And we're, as I said earlier, we're so happy to have links with Trans in the City. It means a huge amount to us, and I know that it amplifies our voice too. So thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. That is the end of another exciting podcast. Really hope you've enjoyed it. Please do check out FFLAG and look at how maybe you can support them or get support from them. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you for the next podcast soon.